So my research project topic deals with natural disasters and the impacts they have on communities. First context I looked into was focusing on program, which is protection and resiliency in this case. By protection, I mean having cities take more preventative measures, particularly in design and planning, including reducing horizontal footprints of buildings and cities, and using more permeable materials in construction. The idea of resiliency is tied into protection because if a community is less impacted by disaster, it instantly becomes more resilient. Why have cities become so vulnerable to disasters? There's a number of reasons. Destruction of natural landscape is a big one, which is something that Interborough focused on in their grassroots regionalism project. They're attempting to restore a lot of the natural landscapes along ocean coastlines, which would help reduce the impacts of storm surge and flooding as well. Lastly, social isolation has also led to poor neighborhoods being less resilient as well as making them more vulnerable. Poor neighborhoods are often located in lower lying areas, which are obviously just more vulnerable to flooding simply because of their elevation in relation to the sea and the oceans. To resolve these issues, I propose implementing stricter zoning techniques, and particularly mixed-use zoning can really help. Mixed-use zoning has also proven effective by bringing different types of infrastructure into one place, while also creating a more diverse community. It gets poor people and rich people together and creates like a tighter knit community. And the topic of zoning transitions into my next topic, which is zoning policies. So zoning policies are becoming more stricter in regards to helping reduce floodwaters and storm surge. Popular zoning technique that does this pretty effectively is mixed-use zoning. I've talked about that a little bit already. Mixed-use zoning is the breaking down of segregated and ordered land uses into one conglomerate of residential, commercial, and industrial areas. This principle of mixed use is strengthened by the fact that financial districts are typically the cause of severe flooding because water in those areas has nowhere to go really because there's so many impermeable surfaces. So the water ends up going into lower lying areas, which are typically where residential communities are located. Now, to resolve this, obviously in developed areas it's a little more difficult because land area is already taken up by buildings and whatnot, parking lots. So my proposal is to incorporate intentional floodplains in areas that are either open or not used in developed cities, which could also double as recreational amenities to make them more appealing to residents, make them actually like want to live there. And the idea of implementing these sort of safer areas or more accessible areas also leads into my last topic, which is dealing with accessibility to resources during times of natural disaster. So the last context is accessibility. Accessibility is pretty straightforward. Giving people in need or that are people that are in danger during natural disasters a safe place to go when storms/flooding are ravaging their communities. Of course, most coastal communities do have such a place. You saw that with New Orleans with the Superdome when Katrina hit, but they often run out of supplies pretty quickly. I propose that resources are given out on a basis of need, particularly those that are lower income, and that resources can either be bought through donations, city funds, tax money, or really all of the above. At this point, the idea of resiliency and coexistence comes back into play. In this scenario, people aren't just living for themselves, but are also working for the good of the whole community and for the benefit of both the rich and the poor.